My name is Gus Myrams. I'm 42 years old. I live in Lanzarote and I am a supporter of Patriotic Alternative, but I feel that it's failing and I feel that it's not going in the right direction that it needs to go to achieve the level of growth that the BNP managed to achieve back in the day. And we need it to get to the level that the BNP got to back in the day, and even hopefully to go beyond it. Now there's certain reasons for this, and I've emailed Mark, and I will read my email to sort of make it public of my stance on why Patriotic Alternative is not succeeding as it should, and it's only in the embryonic stages now. Just to give you a bit about myself, I've lived here in Lanzarote since the beginning of August. Before that, I was a police officer from 2015 to 2020, and I was sacked because, despite treating all members of the public the same and never mentioning my views at work, on Facebook, outside work, in my own time, I criticised police participation in gay pride parades, and I clicked like on Traditional Britain and Britain First, two right-wing groups. And this was enough in modern totalitarian liberal Britain to get me sacked from the police force, even though I'd never done anything wrong at work. Before that, I was a prison officer for a year, and before that I was a postman for 9 years, and before that I was a history teacher for a year, but I had a row with a Liberal and I lost that job too. So I'm someone who has lost 2 careers because of right-wing principles that I hold to. So I'm someone who has made sacrifice for the movement, and I'm also someone who has been a loyal foot soldier in the movement for a lot of years. I was involved in the BNP back in the day, and I've also been involved in UKIP, and I've been a member of Traditional Britain and the Swinton Circle, and I don't know if anyone remembers the late great Mike Smith and the Conservative Democratic Alliance, and I was in that as well. And way before that I was in the Monday Club and the Conservative Party. But obviously, as they sold out, they became less and less appealing to people of a right-wing nationalist Christian bent like myself. Now, my reasons for thinking that Patriotic Alternative is going wrong is twofold. I think there is an over-obsession on the part of Mark, which I think he's also led Laura into, over certain historical events and a question of the blues. And there's also this aspect that Mark and Laura, they don't seem willing to create a large political movement with various diverse points of view and characters and wings within it. Rather, they want a sort of cult almost, where everyone has the same view and everyone just follows what Mark and Laura say, which is disappointing, because they seem to me very nice, very likeable, very clever, and very sincere people. But I think they aren't aware of what a political movement needs to be and the diversity you need to have within it, both of opinion and characters, in order for it to succeed. So I'll read my email that I wrote to Mark, and this was after last week when he was on PWR. And I wrote to Mark and I said, Arthur Kemp told you to leave the Holocaust to the historians. Why can't you leave the damn thing alone? If it was 4 million and not 6 million, so what? Is this really the thing to destroy a political movement in 2020 over, trying to rehabilitate some long dead 1940s dictator? Most historians who have studied the events of World War II in far more detail than you or I estimate the number of dead Jews at 6 million. People who were there at the time, indeed ex-SS members, have said there were mass killings and gassings. We do not need to deny this historical event. We just need to put it in its context as one of many massacres and one of many genocides that sadly has occurred throughout history. And this is what floored Nick. It was no coincidence that the very first thing he was asked on Question Time was about Holocaust denial. This was the thing the BBC knew they could use to scare the normie millions away from the BNP. How much more effective if, rather than going on about radio messages from British intelligence, Nick had just said, yes, I don't deny 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis for 1 second, but Hitler also killed 20 million Russians by launching Operation Barbarossa, only 12 million of which were battlefield deaths, and 3 million Poles. So why don't they ever get a mention either? And also, while we're on the subject of genocide, why do the far greater communist genocides of Mao and Stalin not get a mention either? Going down the road that there were no gas chambers is where the liberal elites want right-wing movements to go. Now let me be frank, Mark, when we see the excesses of today's sick West, sometimes many right-wing people do think, my God, maybe the Axis powers had a point. You know, when we see things like Desmond is amazing, stuff like that, we start to think maybe those guys in the Axis had a point. But it doesn't mean that we agree with everything that they did. Now, the very best thing that can be said about Hitler is he would not have let the mass of third world humanity into Europe that we have today. However, the fact remains, like every dictator, he was a bad man. Even if you leave out the 6 million massacred Jews, 3 million Russian prisoners of war were starved and beaten and mistreated to death. Operation Barbarossa's objective was to take Russia away from the Russians and turn them into a slave population. Hitler believed that Russians and Poles, Slavs, were inferior. This is as absurd as turning Southern Europeans against, say, Scandinavians or Nordics. And especially today, when whites are less and less of a percentage of the world, we should be sticking together, not genociding each other, like we sadly did in the 1940s. Now, I've quoted here, when I met one of the TASOB lads, Euro, at a PA meeting, he tried to tell me absurdly that Hitler was trying to liberate Russia from communism and liberate the Russians. Now, we know that the Nazis, as well as dreadfully treating Russian prisoners of war, the way they treated the Russian civilian population was disgusting, and often large numbers of people in places like Kiev were left to starve to death. Now, of course, the Nazis wanted to destroy communism, which was good, but the way they treated white Russian Christians, before you even get to Jews, this was appalling, as was the way Hitler treated his own comrades in 1934, lining up and shooting SA members without even the semblance of investigation or trial. There was no coup plot. Röhm had a big mouth, and Himmler and Heydrich used this to manufacture false evidence. But in 1934, in the Night of Long Knives, Hitler and Goering behaved like mafia gangsters. Is this what we are going to push in a 2020 political party? To rehabilitate some dead, failed, evil regime and flawed leaders? The extreme left aren't so daft as to undermine themselves by trying to say Pol Pot and Mao were nice guys. Remember, Mark, the normies have grown up on a diet of films and comics, with the Nazis being the ultimate bogeyman, of Hitler being in the modern day devil. Now, if I want a person to vote for me today, and I want to win them over on the issues of the day today, what is the point of me arguing with them over what happened in a camp over 100 years ago, over whether it was 6 million, 4 million, over whether there was this many gassed, over whether this atrocity occurred, this didn't? It's as pointless as losing someone's vote as it is if you row over Genghis Khan and Ivan the Terrible and how many they killed. And this is why the BNP never hit the big time under John Tyndall. Because even though he was a great speaker with a sharp mind, every time the momentum started, the media trotted out the cartoonish photos of him dressed up in that 1930s brown uniform. And indeed, the reason the BNP progressed to the level that it did back in 2007, back in 2008, is because we distanced ourselves from obsessions with dead regimes and dead dictators, pointing out instead the problems with modern multicultural Britain. Then Mark says to me and others, when he talks about us BNP members not being hardcore enough back in the day, he says about his little online army of meme warriors, of anonymous teenage meme warriors, are more steadfast. But these are the key words, Mark: anonymous and online. Those of us at the red, white and blue back in the day, we were there under our own names, under our own identities, seeing people face to face, and we had leafleted on the street and spoken with members of the public. Mark's little army, who are just as extreme and hardcore as him and don't compromise, they're teenagers behind a picture, a meme, in their little bedroom, and their only political activity, in a lot of cases, has been on that laptop, behind this laptop. Now, when we get to World War II, I am prepared to say in public that Britain should have stayed neutral in 1939 and 1914, as before these two devastating world wars, Britain was a rich world empire, and after, it was a bankrupt third-rate nation that couldn't even carry out a mundane operation like Suez. Now, when you say this, straight away, you're going to get the tragedies and the atrocities of Hitler put in your face. Now, what I would point out to this is that in 1939, Britain and the USA did not go to war because Hitler was persecuting Jews. Because I don't know how many people know about the Evian Conference. The Evian Conference, before this, Britain and the USA did not agree to take any large numbers of European Jews. And that was all the Jews were requesting at the Evian Conference, countries that would give them, safe haven, and Britain and the USA refused to give any large numbers of Jewish people from Nazi Germany safe haven. And I think the country that had the biggest offer was the Dominican Republic, which offered to take 100,000. Now, second, I'd point out that if Britain and the USA had not joined World War II, Hitler's war would have remained a localised war on the Eastern Front between Germany and Russia. It would not have become a massive world war life and death struggle. So it is unlikely in such an event that the momentum would have been there for the Nazis to undertake such atrocities, because they couldn't have excused them to the German population in terms of we're in a life and death struggle. And finally, I would point out that the Nazis moved from emigration to extermination because Britain controlled the seas. And they, at the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, they decided they could no longer emigrate people, so they were going to exterminate them. Now, had Britain remained neutral, a neutral Britain could have mediated to ensure that atrocities like this did not happen, and we could have evacuated Jews to nations like the Dominican Republic, whose dictator wanted European refugees in order to have a greater proportion of white people in his country. We could have also said that some parts of Africa where the British Empire held sway, they could have some could have been allowed to resettle there. And obviously, as we know, the average Ashkenazi IQ is 112, and whether we like it or not, certain sub-Saharan African IQs are not quite so high, and so a large number of Jews down there may have aided progress on that continent. Because the average IQ tends to be a little bit higher. Now, if I say these points, two normies. First of all, I'm splitting my enemies. I've got the left-wing Jews and black people. They're now going to be a little bit of having a row because the black people, like in the case of Wiley, they're now going to get their backs up that the left-wing Jews think they're cleverer than them, which they secretly do. Now, I'm confident that if I make these arguments about World War II, it would sound reasonable to a normie. Now, one of Mark's little meme warriors who comes in to the debate, and the first thing he says is, there were no gas chambers, there were no atrocities, straight away he loses the room. Everyone's outraged, he doesn't get anywhere. So, yes, we can challenge World War II and the narrative that we are given on Spitfire patriotism and Churchill, and how it wasn't as we're told that this war had to be fought and Britain's empire had to be destroyed fighting this war. We can challenge the narrative, but if you then go to that further extent, which is where Mark wants to put PA, that the Nazis didn't kill any, have mass genocides, then you're losing the room. You're just being ridiculous, because the evidence is there. And a lot of Mark's little meme warriors, I even wonder if they'd have the guts to come out and say this argument in person up front. And it's the same with this wider question that Mark will often refer to, the blue question. Now, this is one of many issues. Yes, they are overrepresented on the left in things like the BBC, advertising, pornography, but there is only around 300,000 Jewish people in Britain, and their level of intermarriage is high, unlike the Muslims. And in the next 20 years, through outbreeding, they may halve even their numbers, because many half-Jewish people do not even consider themselves Jewish. I don't know how many of you are fans, like I am, of the Sopranos podcast with Steve Sherpa, who played Bobby Bacala. Now, he has a Jewish mum, yet he was raised Catholic, and his whole identity and acting career in the Sopranos is based around his dad's Italian identity. So why do you want to alienate people like that with going on and on about a JQ? And I could point to other people who in history who were half Jewish, like Count Arco Valley in Weimar, Germany, who was a fanatical right-wing nationalist. I could even point to people like the DJ, Dr. Savage, whose programme I enjoy. Now, he wants people who push pornography imprisoned. So you can hardly accuse someone like that of being involved in and behind pornography. Now, with these issues, all we need to do is say every left-wing person engaged in anti-white activity can be dealt with, can be challenged. Why should we worry about this one is Jewish, and this one isn't. And there are other groups who are also overrepresented in anti-white activity. It isn't just Jewish people. I remember, I've said in my email to Mark, when I was a postman at Royal Mail, I remember another postman who was a gay man and a lefty, and he told me he rejoiced when he saw a film about which featured a white South African apartheid politician being shot. And that's not the first time. And for every decent, discreet, right-wing gay person, there are 10 chip-on-shoulder, militant lefty fanatics. But this doesn't mean that we have to be obsessed with them and talking about a gay question. Like, you know, some people in PA want to constantly talk about a Jewish question because there is, various people involved in left-wing activities who are of that faith. Now, one of my favourite science fiction authors, Isaac Asimov, he was a writer of genius. Now, he was Jewish. What, should I dislike him because he was Jewish? And I think this whole obsession with this one question, it's like you're putting a neon sign over patriotic alternative saying, go away normies. And you're making yourself look like these Hollywood cartoonish Nazis. And yes, we need to point out the hypocrisy of left-wing Jews who demand their own ethno-state, then seek to deny one to white people. Yes, we need to say, if someone's first loyalty is to Israel, maybe they should live there. Yes, we need to say that the Holocaust was a tragedy and a genocide, but is one of many genocides and many tragedies in history, and is by no means the only genocide or even the biggest genocide and tragedy in history. I mean, Chairman Mao, 50 million, Stalin, Holodomor, 11 million. You know, all genocides should be remembered, not just one, and I don't think it's offensive or Holocaust denial to say that. And then we get to part of the problem here. And part of the problem is, Mark and Laura, you think it is all about image. You think that's all that stopped the BNP hitting the big time is image. Now you think if we all put suits on and meet in a Marriott Hotel and there's not a flag in sight, rather than as the BNP used to meet and various other organisations I've attended like the Swinton Circle, the CDA, if we meet, that they all used to meet in the back of a pub, you know, with the creased Union Jack over the table. Now Mark seemed to think, oh, if we meet in a Marriott Hotel rather than the back room of a pub, they can sell stuff more extreme than the BNP or other groups like Traditional Britain have ever tried to do. And I say to Mark and Laura, this is a fallacy. Yeah, it's not 100% image. Yes, image is a part of selling nationalism. Yes, the way we present ourselves matters. But there comes a point when you must sell your nationalist ideas, your alt-right philosophy to a normie. When you have to reach them. And, you know, Nick Griffin said about this, there is a difference between selling out and selling your policies. And this is why Nick, for all his faults, he was able to move the BNP to the highest level that any nationalist party has been moved in modern British history. And Nick was also flexible on these ideological issues because he knew that was what was required. I mean, there was a Jewish lady who was right-wing and a good nationalist. I can't remember her name, might have been Pat someone. She was allowed to join. And I'd say, you know, it was right that she was. And, you know, the BNP, when they had this flexibility and they had this normie-friendly policies, it was far, far more effective and far, far more saleable than PA going down this hardcore route of there were no gas chambers, JQ, JQ all the time. But it's not just, this obsession with historical events and the JQ that's undermining PA. There's another problem, and this is people are getting ghosted. Soon as they have a disagreement or something happens, they're non-personed. I mean, look at Millennial Woes. It was never said explicitly what he'd done. The leadership never made it clear. It was just sort of vague allusions. Some people said he'd done something really bad. Other people downplayed it. I met him personally. I liked him. He didn't seem like a predator or a pervert to me. And then the other week I heard Hugh on the offensive say he hadn't done anything wrong. Now then we had recently Unwashed, another content creator. He was just dumped the minute he disagreed with Mark Collett. Non-person dumped. And then I heard, even more recently, it's happened to Ralph Right Reaction, who's got the guts to go and face down opponents in public, in person at Speaker's Corner. He was then ghosted because he disagreed with Mark and Laura. He may be eccentric, but he's clever. He's got a lot to contribute. And a political movement, it can't just consist of Mark and Laura's fan club. And for all his faults, Nick Griffin, as we know, he never got along with the oratory legend Jonathan Bowden. But when Bowden applied to join the BNP, Nick Griffin didn't turn him away because he knew he had a contribution to make. Now, PA, in its embryonic stages, is dumping on a whim, ghosting people, purity spiralling. I mean, even Stalin, he didn't start purging people until he had total power. And see, a political movement is a large, unwieldy beast. It will contain various characters. It will contain various viewpoints. And it can't just be a cult built around people who agree with everything that Mark and Laura say. And, Mark and Laura, they've got to think past these personal likes and dislikes. I mean, why not have Nick Griffin on the next Patriotic Weekly Review? Mark, you'd get the biggest viewer numbers ever. Everyone would want to know and see what was going on with that and that debate. But you won't have him on because you don't get on with him personally. Now, the guy who lost me my job in the police because he grasped me and informed on me because of what I'd said online about police joining in gay pride parades. Now, I obviously don't like him. But if I was told that I could debate him online and have massive viewer numbers and in so doing push our movement forward, I'd be willing to do it. And in my final part to Mark and Laura, I've said here, I've told you on this video my working history. And I think part of the problem with all this, maybe the cause of all this, is that Mark and Laura, they're clever, they're well-spoken, they're likeable people, but they are both self-employed. Now, as I said, as a teacher, as a postman, as a prison officer, as a policeman, I've spent years working amongst the normie drones. I've spent years biting my tongue at work. I know how far we can take these people. I know what we can sell these people. And I think people who are self-employed, who only hang around with and work with people that they get on with, and they don't have to hold their tongue and they can build their whole life around the movement, and they're never in situations where that they see the normies and the way they think and the mental blocks they have around certain issues. I think they don't maybe have that same realisation of how the distance between some of our positions and the mainstream normie position. and we've got to close that distance by being flexible. Now, you know, I'm not trolling them. They can dismiss me as some 42-year-old guy sat in Lanzarote trolling the movement. I'm not trolling the movement. I'd love to see Mark and Laura in Parliament, but purity spiralling, JQ obsessing, you know, disputing the numbers of certain historical events almost 100 years ago, and disowning and ghosting anyone the minute they have a disagreement with you is not what's going to get PA to the big time. And Mark and Laura, they're clever people. They must know this. And obviously Mark didn't reply to my email because this is sadly what they do. They, as soon as you point out the flaws, they don't want to know. And I just hope they maybe realise that, you know, if we are going to hit the big time, if we are going to build a good political movement, you know, that is going to take power, that is going to, you know, get as big and hopefully even bigger than the BNP got, then we need the flexibility. We need the diversity in the movement. And we need, for God's sake, to leave historical events to the historians where they belong. You know, Mark and Laura, you're either a politician or a historian. You know, let's not try and be both. And let's leave the purity spiraling, let's leave the blues obsession, and let's sell the policy to normies. And it's not all about image. We can do it in the back room of a pub. We can do it in a Marriott Hotel. But there comes a point when you've got to sell those ideas. And at the moment, I'm sorry to tell you, some of the ideas are a long way from being sellable. Now, thank whoever's taken the time to watch this video, and I'm sure many people in the PA sphere who want PA to do well will feel the same way I do. As I say, I'm not a YouTube star, I'm not Millennial Woes or On the Offensive or Dr. Dutton. I'm not a political leader, I'm just a humble foot soldier, a humble PA follower, but I've been around a long time in the nationalist movement, and I know what's sellable and what's not. And sadly at the moment, a lot of the stuff in PA is, you know, being pushed by PA is not sellable and does not have mass appeal. And it needs to be altered and be fine-tuned. So thank you for your time.